I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would tell a story like this. To the world, my life looked perfect. The house, the husband, the quiet dinners where we laughed about work and plans we never really followed through with. I had everything I was told to want. And for the longest time, I believed that was enough. David and I had been married for 8 years. We met in college. I was drawn to his calm confidence, that quiet way he made every room feel safe. Back then, love was simple. We didn't need to say much, just being together felt like enough. But somewhere along the way, that ease turned into distance. The kind that doesn't happen overnight, but one silent evening after another. He started working later, coming home tired, saying he needed space to think. And when he was home, it was like his body was there but his mind wasn't. We still talked, but not about us. Not about how I felt invisible. I tried. I planned weekends away. I wore the perfume he used to love. I left little notes in his car, the kind I used to write when we were dating. He smiled at them, but it was the kind of smile you give to a memory, not to the person standing in front of you. Then, one night, he looked at me in a way I hadn't seen in months. There was something strange in his eyes, something between affection and curiosity. He said, "Maybe we've just become predictable. Maybe we need to try something new." At first, I thought he meant a vacation, or dance classes, or even therapy. But that wasn't what he meant. The next evening, he showed me a video, a couple, sitting together, laughing, talking about how they'd spiced up their marriage. I didn't understand at first, until the video changed, and I realized what kind of spice they meant. I remember looking at him, waiting for the punchline. But he just watched me quietly, as if studying my reaction. He said, "Don't look so shocked. It's normal now. People do this to reconnect." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I told him that wasn't us, that we didn't need that. He smiled again, and this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe you don't need it," he said softly. "But maybe I do." That night, I lay in bed next to him, listening to his breathing, wondering when love had turned into something that felt like a test. He reached for my hand in the dark, and for the first time, I hesitated before taking it. He whispered, "I just want you to be happy." But I couldn't tell anymore whose happiness he was talking about, mine, or his idea of it. And that's when I realized, something inside our marriage had shifted. Not broken, not yet. But something had cracked, and I could already feel the cold air slipping in through the gap. After that night, David changed in ways I couldn't quite understand. He became softer, more affectionate, almost too affectionate. He'd brush my hair from my face, make coffee for me in the mornings, and text me during the day just to say he loved me. It felt like the man I fell in love with had come back, until I realized it wasn't love pulling him closer. It was persuasion. He started dropping small comments, disguised as jokes. "You know, some couples do it to bring back excitement," he'd say while scrolling on his phone. Or, "You're so beautiful, I'd love to see how others look at you." At first, I laughed him off. But he didn't stop. Every time I changed the subject, he circled back, gentle, patient, but persistent. One evening, while we were having dinner, he looked at me seriously and said, "I think we should try it. For us." My fork froze midair. "Try what?" I asked, even though I already knew. He leaned back, his eyes calm and certain. "Let's invite someone else into our life. Just once. It could fix what's missing." I remember the way my stomach turned. I told him it wasn't missing, that love doesn't need to be proved that way. He smiled sadly, like I was being naive. "It's not about proving anything," he said. "It's about honesty, about freedom. You've been so closed off lately. Maybe this will open you up again." For days, we didn't talk about it. But his words echoed in my head: freedom, trust, honesty. I started wondering if maybe I was the problem, if maybe I was too old-fashioned, too scared to give him what he wanted. Nights became heavy with silence. I'd turn to him in bed, hoping to find the warmth we used to have, but his touch felt like a question I didn't want to answer. Sometimes he'd whisper, "Don't you trust me?" And every time, that question cut a little deeper. Then one night, he showed me pictures on his phone. 2 men, tall, confident, smiling. He said he'd met them through a mutual friend. My throat went dry. He said the names like they were part of a plan he'd been building for months. They're respectful, he said. They understand boundaries. It's not about love, it's just an experience. I wanted to scream, to tell him he'd crossed a line. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, frozen, wondering when I stopped having a say in my own marriage. He took my hand gently and whispered, "You said you'd do anything for us. This is it. Just once, and we'll never talk about it again." I remember nodding, not because I agreed, but because I was too afraid of what would happen if I didn't. That night, after he fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself it was love. But somewhere deep down, I already knew, love had nothing to do with what was coming next. The night came faster than I expected. I told myself it was just another evening, that nothing would really happen. But when David dimmed the lights and poured me a glass of wine, I knew it was real. My hands shook so badly that the glass left a small red stain on the tablecloth. He was calm, almost gentle, as if this was something normal, something loving. He said, "You look beautiful," and kissed my forehead. But behind his eyes, I saw something else. Something cold. When the knock came at the door, my heart stopped. For a moment, I hoped he'd change his mind. That he'd say, "We don't have to do this." But he didn't. He opened the door, greeted them like friends, and I stood there, frozen, smiling out of habit, because I didn't know what else to do. The room felt smaller than ever. The air was heavy, almost hard to breathe. They spoke politely, awkwardly, as if everyone was pretending this was something ordinary. And then, silence. I remember the way David looked at me, not with love, not even with lust, but with expectation. He nodded once, and in that moment, something in me broke. I felt myself separate, like I was watching from far away, like it was happening to someone else. Everything that followed felt distant, mechanical. I heard voices, movements, the sound of breathing, but it all blurred together. There was no passion, no connection, only the echo of his eyes on me, watching. It wasn't about desire, it was about control. I could feel it in every second, the way he wanted to see me surrender, not to pleasure, but to his idea of it. At some point, I looked over at him. He was sitting still, eyes locked on me, unblinking. He didn't smile, he didn't speak, he just watched, as if this was some twisted test I had to pass. I don't know how long it lasted. Time didn't move normally that night. When it was over, the men left quietly, saying polite goodbyes that felt like another layer of shame. David closed the door and turned to me, his face unreadable. He kissed my forehead again, the same gentle kiss as before, and whispered, "See. It wasn't so bad." I didn't answer. I walked past him, into the bathroom, and turned on the shower. The water was scalding hot, but I couldn't stop shivering. No matter how long I stood there, I couldn't wash it off. When I came out, he was already in bed, asleep, or pretending to be. I lay beside him, staring into the dark. That was the night I realized our marriage wasn't about love anymore. It was about power, and I had just given him all of mine. The morning after felt unreal. The light coming through the curtains looked too bright, almost cruel. David was already dressed, humming softly while making coffee, like it was just another Sunday. He handed me a cup and said, "You were amazing last night." I stared at him, trying to find a trace of guilt, but all I saw was satisfaction. Something inside me went silent. For the next few days, we barely spoke. He seemed lighter, almost relieved. I, on the other hand, felt like I was disappearing, piece by piece, thought by thought. At night, I'd lie next to him, pretending to sleep, but I could feel the space between us growing wider with every breath. He would reach for my hand sometimes, but I didn't have the strength to hold it back. I started keeping a journal, something I hadn't done in years. Not because I wanted to remember, but because I needed proof that I hadn't gone insane. I wrote everything down, the looks, the silences, the way he twisted love into something I couldn't recognize anymore. And when I read my own words, I saw the truth. It wasn't about intimacy, it was about ownership. A week later, I asked him why. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd shown me that video weeks before. He looked at me as if I was being dramatic. You said yes, he replied calmly. I felt the anger rise in my chest. I said yes because you pushed me to, I said. He shrugged. I didn't force you. You could have said no. And that was the moment I realized just how far gone we were, how deeply he believed his own manipulation. There was no shouting, no tears this time. I simply stood up, walked to the bedroom, and started packing. He didn't try to stop me. Maybe he thought I'd come back. Maybe he didn't care. But as I zipped the suitcase, I felt something inside me finally exhale, a strange, quiet relief I hadn't felt in months. When I walked out the door, I didn't look back. The sky was gray, the air heavy, but I felt lighter with every step. For the first time in years, the silence didn't scare me. I don't tell this story for pity. I tell it because there are women out there who think love means sacrifice. That saying, yes, when your heart is screaming, no, somehow makes you loyal. It doesn't. Love should never make you small. It should never demand your dignity as proof of devotion. He said he wanted me to be free. In the end, I was, but not in the way he imagined. Freedom came the day I chose myself over the version of me he tried to create. And I've never looked back since.